All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to this week's episode. Coach Bo with you. Great to have you all here. Got a couple things to start off before we get into part 3, the last part of our interview with Coach Murphy. Well, I hope all of you are doing well. I hope this episode finds everything well with all of you. And I wanted to take just a minute to talk at the very beginning of the show and just kind of share out my feelings on the importance of life and how valuable and fragile life is and how valuable our time is. Because you never know how long we're going to be around. We all want to live to 80 or 90. That'd be great. Or 100. That'd be even better, especially with good health. But we just don't always know how things are going to turn out in the future. And that's okay. That makes waking up each day an adventure in a way, because it's not completely predictable. And there's surprises and things and experiences that we never imagined would happen. So I got a message from a good friend, actually Coach Murray, who was on the show a couple weeks back, and Coach Tim Murray sent me a text message, a sad text message. One of the former coaches, or coach that was in the coaching community in the Orange County coaching community, known by pretty much everybody in the Orange County, the Southern California coaching community baseball, longtime Corona Del Mar high school baseball coach John Emmy, passed away, and I don't really know all the details, and nor is it my place to get into it right now, but he passed away, and the baseball community, when he retired, lost a tremendous coach, and now we've lost a tremendous person. And Coach Emmy's impact on a lot of coaches and a lot of people is going to go on and on and on. He was one of those coaches, when you would coach on the same field with him, that you really truly believed he cared about his players. Not only did he know the game, but he knew, or he cared about, and he knew the importance of caring about his players. In fact, you can see some of the players that he's coached that have gone on. He's got players that are still out there playing professional, playing college baseball. He really did a tremendous job in the win-loss column, but he did an even better job with the connections and the relationships. You'd see him, the players, the respect they had for him. He wasn't a lovey-dovey coach, but the kids respected him, but he also showed a lot of heart towards the kids. And you could see that they really played hard for him. They liked him a lot. And Coach Emmy will surely be missed. He was one of those coaches that I always look forward to seeing out there. Even though I would be competing against him, I would be competing with him as a coach. We would be coaching against each other. But nonetheless, I just always loved seeing him and talking with him, because it was such a good vibe that he put off. And Coach Emmy will surely be missed by the baseball community. We need more Coach Emmys. And I hope that everybody that was surrounded by him, or that came in contact with him, or was part of his community, the circle in his coaching community, can take the lessons that we can learn from him and really implement and use them, and continue to just build off of what he was doing. And so that was a bummer. And the baseball community needs more coaches like Coach Emmy, and we need more people in the world like Coach Emmy. So that's a bummer. And anytime you lose somebody close to you, that's a bad deal. And then when you're a baseball coach like myself, you lose somebody that's a good person and a great coach. It's a double bummer, because all the impact that he had on not just the people in his life, I'm sure, his family, I'm sure, just, then you have the coaching community, all the players that will, have to move forward. But nonetheless, great coaches like John Emmy, just really good people. And so go out there and be your version of Coach John Emmy. And I know most all of you listening just don't know who Coach Emmy was, but nonetheless, the coach this avatar coach that I define and we talk about in and on this podcast was embodied in Coach Emmy. And so when you go out there and you love on the players, you care about the players, but you're also firm with the players when you need to be, along with wanting to get better with strategies and skills and skill development and winning games, but winning with the players, winning with the team culture, that's what he was all about. So go out there and be a Coach Emmy out there on the field. And remember, life is fragile. Take care of yourselves, take care of your family, and just enjoy it. And go out there and remember, baseball, life should be enjoyable. And baseball sure as heck should be fun. It should be fun. Sure, it's a training ground for life and the challenges and ups and downs and struggles of life and making an error and coming back and having a slump or having success and dealing with success or dealing with failure, striking out and getting back up there and moving forward, short-term memory and those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, we got to have fun out there. For crying out loud, life is way too short. Even if you're fortunate enough to live to 90, it's still going to be a blink. It's still going to be a blink. My old man turned 70 a month ago, 70 years old. It's like yesterday. He was coaching my Little League team. He had all his hair. So the next time you're out there on the field, just keep it in perspective. Make it enjoyable. And just remember, we should enjoy this life. It doesn't mean we're not working hard. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges, but let's go out and enjoy the life. Let's enjoy it and keep it in perspective. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be a coach. And that does not mean you can't teach skills, you can't have better drills. That does not mean you won't win more games. But geez, if you're going out there and you aren't having fun multiple times at each practice with a smile or a laugh or during the games, you need to really have a check in the mirror. You got to look in the mirror. You got to think about it. You probably need to get out of coaching. You probably need to start watching some more comedy. But nonetheless, I'll wrap that up right there. It's just a bummer. Coach Emmy, just one of those great coaches. And this is a coaching podcast, a baseball podcast. I mean, I know players listen to this and parents listen to this, but it's really based for youth coaches, and that's where I'm trying to serve. And Coach Emmy was just a phenomenal coach at high school, but that's still youth when he's working with 14, 15-year-olds that were on his varsity team. He had freshmen and sophomores. Those are young. They're not much different than 13-years and 12-Us and 11-Us and 10-Us and all that. All right, speaking of high school, Gary Sheffield was the Gatorade National High School Player of the Year back in 1986. So Gary Sheffield, and I talked about Gary Sheffield not that long ago on his hitting approach, but this is really interesting. Listen to this. I think this is really, really, really interesting because we're hearing a lot of stuff. You are probably hearing a lot of stuff if you're into the baseball community, if you're into learning about coaching, reading articles, watching videos, listening to podcasts about coaching. You're probably hearing a lot about things like launch angle or, guys trying to hit home runs rather than just put the ball in play, and high strikeout totals. You hear a lot about high strikeout totals and hitters having a high strikeout totals, and guys will bring up old school players and say, he only struck out 22 times a season. Well, baseball is not about not striking out. It's not about striking out. It's about producing runs. So if you produce more runs and you strike out a little bit more, then you want to strike out a little bit more because you're producing more runs than if you did the alternative. You had a protective swing, kind of a defensive swing. That's not good, but you're not going up there. And I think what happens is a lot of coaches in the baseball community has misunderstood this whole idea. I really, truly believe that swinging hard at a pitch or trying to drive a pitch with less than 2 strikes is not going to lead to more strikeouts. Swinging at bad pitches, swinging at pitchers' pitches, swinging at pitches outside of the zone, taking good pitches, if a hitter takes pitches in his hitting zone, those are the ingredients that add up to strikeouts, not swinging hard. Now, swinging out of control is a totally different thing. But swinging 100%, 100% velocity, 100% swing power, that will not reduce the amount of runs that a hitter is going to help his team produce. And that's the bottom line statistic. All these statistics that we talk about, the only one that matters is how many runs you produce on offense and how many runs you contribute to your team on offense as a hitter. And so at the end of the day, that's why WAR, wins above replacement, that statistic, or weighted runs created plus for hitters, that's why that statistic is so, and even on defense, you have defensive runs saved. Those are the stats that matter. Those are the stats. And as a pitcher, how many runs do you give up? How many runs do you give up that were your fault? Not, so it's, earned runs, insofar as those earned runs were accurately recorded. So listen to this very interesting statistic. I thought this was fascinating. Gary Sheffield, Gatorade National High School Player of the Year 1986. By the way, Gary Sheffield, I believe he's the cousin or the nephew of Dwight Gooden. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool because those two were just amazing major league players. And I want to say Dwight was his uncle or his cousin, but nevertheless, they were related. They were close. There's actually pictures of them together when they both were up in the major leagues. I believe they went to the same high school. I'm almost certain they went to the same high school in Florida. So Gary Sheffield, senior year statistics, 17 years old, 18 years old, senior year statistics. He had a batting average 500. He batted 500. Now, I'm not a big proponent of batting average, but it gives context for everybody. I'm still going to use that probably for, 5 or 10 more years because I have to relate to everybody that's listening. Now, if I'm talking to somebody in the front office for the Dodgers, I'm not going to use stats like batting average. They don't use stats like batting average anymore. They've gone way past that. They're getting more accurate statistics. But it's definitely something that's a universal kind of understanding of what a good batting average is. So for that purpose, he batted 500. He batted 500 his senior year. And he had 15 home runs his senior year. 15 home runs. And you're going, well, how many at Florida? Maybe they play long seasons. Maybe he had 150 at-bats, which is a lot for a high schooler. No, 62 at-bats, 15 home runs. He had a home run every 4 at-bats in high school. That's incredibly impressive. Incredibly impressive. He was the high school player of the year for the country. You know how many times he struck out? This is the kicker. You know how many times he struck out? Guy hit 15 home runs. You're like, well, he probably struck out 15 times. If he struck out 10 times, 15 times, that would be really good. If you hit a home run for every time you strike out, you're going to be a Hall of Fame hitter. You're going to have scholarships to every school in the country. You're going to dominate your league. 15 home runs. He had a 500 batting average, 0 strikeouts. 0. Nada. Nil. 0. 15 home runs, 30 hits, 0 strikeouts. That's incredible. Now, my message to all you coaches is this: from that, what we can take from that, what we can extrapolate from that. And sure, it's anecdotal and it's one player, but I've seen this in a large sample size. Hitting for power does not correlate with high strikeouts insofar as it would be a problem. Insofar it would limit. So if a player hits a good amount of home runs or hits a good amount of doubles, hitting for power will produce more runs insofar as that player doesn't swing at pitches outside of the zone, and with less than 2 strikes, that hitter swings consistently at pitches in their hitting zone and doesn't chase pitchers' pitches or just flat out wild pitches. That is more indicative of a hitter's success. So in the baseball community, I hear a lot of this, and I'm trying to help clarify it for all of you. I'm trying to just really take the guesswork out of it for all of you that are all super intelligent people, but you're not, coaching wasn't something that it's not your profession. It's not something that you've been in the trenches for a long time, but you want to be good at it. And some of you are already good at it. You're experts in other fields. You're experts at other things. Your day job is something that you're really good at, but it's not, it's not coaching. It's not baseball, but you want to be a good coach. You want to be a good coach for the players. You want to have some success. You don't want to embarrass yourself. I get it. That's why I'm here. But I understand that time is finite and that we need to be very efficient with our time. And part of that is having you not have to go out and discern and decipher between all of the information out there. What I'm saying is you're going to hear a lot of this. It's to me, when you hear a lot of, hitting for power and you're going to strike out a lot, or home runs, if you hit home runs, you're going to strike out more. There is a correlation, but there's a much stronger correlation with striking out and hitters swinging at bad pitches. Okay. Gary Sheffield is anecdotal, but I truly believe this holds true. The sample size would hold true. It'd be a much larger sample size. If we had the time, I could go through all the hitters that have hit for power. And in fact, in the major leagues, Gary Sheffield had over 1,000 doubles and home runs and triples, extra base hits. He had over 1,000. I mean, if you get 1,000 hits in the big leagues, you're awesome. If you get 2,000, now you're talking, perennial all-star. 3,000, you're Hall of Fame. He got 1,000 extra base hits. Not take the singles out of it. He had 1,000 extra base hits, 509 home runs. and he struck out less than he walked. He actually struck out like 1,100 times. He almost had as many extra base hits as strikeouts, and he had 1,400 some odd walks. So he walked a lot more and extra base hits about the same. Just massive productivity without a high amount of strikeouts. So he did it not just in high school in 1986, but he did it in his 22-year career. And we could go on about all the players that do it. Swinging at bad pitches, swinging at pitches that are, well, with 2 strikes, swinging at pitches that are substantially away from the strike zone. Of course, you got to protect the zone. You got to kind of foul off pitches. You got to swing at more pitches with 2 strikes, of course. But with less than 2 strikes, it's about getting pitches in that hitting zone, which I've said many times might be a third of the strike zone. It might be the size of a beach ball. It might be half of the strike zone. It might be up. It might be down. It might be in. It might be a little away. Depends on the hitter. The hitter's going to prove what they can drive. They're going to show you in practice. They're going to show you in the batting cage. They're going to show you in the games what pitches they can hit. It's not about hey, where do you like it? No. Where do they hit it? Another thing I was going to get into this another episode down the road was, don't ask hitters where they like the pitch. Just watch where they like it. Watch the result, okay? They may think they like the pitch in, but they really like that pitch middle away. They might like the pitch outside, but really they're having their most success with pitches middle in or up or down. Maybe they want the pitch down, but they really like it up. Let their statistics, let their productivity, let the results tell you where their hitting zone is, and tell them where their hitting zone is with less than 2 strikes. So Gary Sheffield, 15 bombs his senior year. That would be like a school record at pretty much every high school. Pretty much every high school. That would be a high school record for pretty much every high school. 0 strikeouts. And I know Gary Sheffield was definitely genetically gifted, strong, quick twitch, very good athlete. But that's not a reason to say he wouldn't have that kind of success. He would have struck out a lot more if he wouldn't have been blessed with those genetics. I don't think he was that far away from other good hitters in high school. Sure, he was a high school player, but I think even if you struck out like 10 times and had 15 home runs, or say you had 5 home runs in a high school season or 6, that would be a good year, or 7 or 10, and you struck out about an equal amount of time. That's still super. That's an outlier season, but even if I'm not saying swing for the fence. I'm not saying swing for the fence. I'm telling you, teach your players to drive the ball. Drive the ball. You're trying to hit the ball through the wall. You're trying to hit the ball hard into the outfield, hitting hard line drives. I love that 15 to 20 degree launch angle. There's a lot of good videos online that'll kind of show you about what that angle would be. But essentially, 0 is a straight line drive from where the bat connects with the ball at the plate. But you really want to get into that 15 degree. I mean, if you can hit the ball hard at about 15 degrees, players are just going to have a crazy amount of productivity, success, and some are going to go a little above that 15. You might hit, hitters are going to hit some at 25, and those are going to be home runs, and then they're going to hit some at 5 that are going to be rocket one hoppers through the infield. There you go. So Gary Sheffield, high school statistics, high school player of the year. Okay, I'm going to transition here to one more part before we get into part 3 of the Coach Murphy interview. So I said early on, I think it was at end of April, maybe a month into the season, I said, I really like how the Padres are looking. I like how they're built. Now, they've struggled. A lot of that's because the Giants are just dominating and the Dodgers are dominating. I think the Dodgers and the Giants have the best records in baseball, and I think it's by a couple games. It's not even like it's neck and neck with other teams, and they're in the same division as the Padres. So the Padres have the 2 best teams, the teams that are playing the best right now in their very own division, which means they have to play them 18 or 20, 22 times or some crazy amount versus playing outside of your division teams. And I also, I'm wondering if the Machado effect didn't come into play a little bit. I know Tatis had a little bit of an injury, but I don't know. I'm kind of curious. I know their pitching has not been as good as it can be. In fact, they got a couple pitchers that, like Snell, it's like, why is he hovering around? Now, he's pitched good of late, but why is he a 4.5 ERA in the National League? I don't think they've got the most out of their pitchers in terms of maximizing or optimizing their deliveries and things like that, their pitch sequencing. But I do know that they could be in fact, Paddock, their pitcher, he's got to be the best pitcher, or I should say the best stuff of any pitcher I've seen with an ERA of 5. He's so close to. I mean, I just think he doesn't throw his changeup enough, and he does use it. But I think if you guys remember Trevor Hoffman, I'm not going to get on a tangent here. I just want to remember Trevor Hoffman. Trevor Hoffman would throw like 3 changeups, and Trevor Hoffman was the all-time save leader at one time. He's a Hall of Famer. Trevor Hoffman, his fastball for the last 10 years of his career couldn't have been more than 88 miles an hour. I mean, it was like a high school fastball, 87. In fact, at the end of his career, he was throwing like 86, 87 miles an hour. Not much faster than a 14U, a really good 14U or a high school pitcher. But he would throw that changeup, and he'd throw 3. He threw such a good changeup with good arm speed, and he had a high slot, and he got good action out of it, and a good differential from it. But he would throw that like 3 times in a row, and everybody would be like, all right, here comes another changeup. Well, he's got to throw a fastball here. He can't throw another one. He's throwing 3. He's throwing 4 in a row. And he'd throw another changeup. And he'd throw another one. And he'd keep having success with it. Doesn't mean you should just throw a ton of changeups. He had other things that he was doing well with that changeup to make it effective. It wasn't just the amount of times he threw it, but also what he was doing with it. But the Paddock, the pitcher for the Padres, is like a 5 ERA all year or above a 5. And I'm like, the guy throws 95, 96. He's got a great pitcher's body. He's got a really good changeup from the action it gets, but he's just struggling. So I don't know. Anyways, my point is I predicted the Padres were going to do better. I wonder if that Machado effect is coming into play. I was up front. I said I would have never signed Machado. I said to a friend a couple years ago when the Padres signed Machado, I would fire the general manager. If I was the owner and they signed Machado or wanted to sign Machado, I'd fire the general manager. Now, that general manager has done a really good job in other areas. But, man, it's really hard to overcome somebody with an attitude like Manny. Now, Manny has some good moments where he can be nice and look cool, but I think that players like Manny Machado, as talented as they are, I don't think they're worth at all. I know they're not. They're just not worth having on the team, and they're definitely not worth $300 million in having on your team. And I wonder if that's coming back to bite them. We'll see, but the Padres are struggling. They're still about 7 games above 500, 6 games above 500. But I wonder if that Machado effect is coming in. It's definitely not helping. So let's get into part 3 of our interview with Coach Patrick Murphy. We're going to cut in. This will wrap up our interview with Coach Murphy. And I can say this, he finishes strong with the information that he's sharing out. So we'll get into this. And if you're not already following Coach Murphy on Twitter, I know a lot of you don't do Twitter. In fact, I've told you many times, I'm not a fan of these social media platforms, some of the things they're doing, but the coaching community on Twitter is really good. I'm a little hesitant to get Instagram. Those things. And I know there's some good coaching content on there. Some of you like me just don't have a lot of time for that. We're not into that. It also it's high anxiety. It's like, you're flipping through 1,000 things and nothing's really in depth, but there is some good parts to it. And I do like the baseball coaching community. What I like about the baseball coaching community on Twitter is there's links to videos, there's links to articles, there's a heads up on books that are coming up, there's heads up on conferences that are out there. And I like that. It's kind of a nice place to kind of keep an eye on the news in the baseball community, much less than what's being communicated with 140 characters. But if I would recommend following Coach Murphy at Coach Murphy 14 at Coach Murphy 14. He's a really good follow. He has such good positivity and he's really intelligent. So you have intelligence and positivity. It's a win-win combination. So follow Coach Murphy at Coach Murphy 14. Also, if you're in the Long Beach, Orange County area, San Gabriel Valley area, Coach Murphy coaches with the CBA Bears, the California Baseball Academy Bears. He's actually the coordinator for the Long Beach chapter, the Long Beach team, I should say. So you can go to cbabaseball.org. You can find out, how to get there, how to contact him there. If you're in that area, I highly recommend trying to see about getting on a team with Coach Murphy, getting on one of his teams. I understand a lot of you don't live in Southern California, so then you just disregard this message. But if you live in that area, I highly recommend you reach out. That would be a great team to try to be a part of. And also, if you're ever playing against a CBA Bear team, keep an eye out for Coach Murphy. Watch how he coaches. Definitely a lot of things to learn. Speaking of learning from him, let's get into the interview. Well, like I said earlier, you are at the top of when I hear a baseball guy, you're at the top. You're just a baseball guy. And that's awesome. That's the passion that is apparent for sure. Next question. Okay. There's the Simon Sinek wrote the book, Start With Why. And so that's been popular. And a lot of people outside of baseball know about that. And, Southwest talked about their why, and they kind of built up Southwest Airlines. It was a big thing was like the why. What's our why? What's our purpose? And I know those aren't baseball, but you've talked about this with baseball teams, sharing the why and giving the players the why behind what it is you're asking them to do. And why is this so important? And why do you believe this is and what's an effective way to present the why to the players, to your players?
I think if we went back to that list I was just talking about, if you kind of have understanding of the foundational purposes of our program and what we're trying to accomplish, and you know why we're trying to accomplish it, then you take ownership in it. And ownership is the big part. If you are somebody that has been in the program for a little while and you see somebody doing something that is below standard and you step in and you say, hey, that's not how we do things here, you're taking ownership of it. So understanding the why, I would agree, is a big part of lessening your fingerprint on the team. If you're able to develop leaders and develop players that don't need you as much as they did when they first got there, I think you're doing it right. So I think the why and the is probably the easier of the why and the how in terms of how to explain the direction you're headed. They pretty quickly grasp why they want to be doing a certain thing, whether, each of them might have their own specific why they're involved or why they have the goal that they have. The tougher conversation is talking about how they're going to reach those goals. How are they going to become the person that they want to be or the player they see themselves becoming? So why and how is certainly connected. And for me, when a player understands why, they are very eager to ask how. If you just give them the how, which a lot of coaches do, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, a lot of people are left wondering why they do it. And then they are left needing you more and more. And for me, I want them to need me less and less. Recently, I had played a game that I didn't have to do very much. You're looking out onto the field and the players know where to be depending on the circumstance, the situation, the hitter that's there, the score. They know the pitcher and catcher calling the game by themselves. They are understanding of the situation where what pitch would be the appropriate pitch to throw there. They're holding runners independently. These things are the product of understanding why we do what we do, because they're engaged in the how at practice. And when you show up for competition, the less I'm involved, the better. To get them to take that type of ownership, they absolutely have to understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Wow, I love how you put that. I don't know if I've ever thought about it like that. Good coaches develop players that have a mindset, kind of like they all kind of are leader. They all kind of develop, you kind of cultivate a leader mindset, an independent mindset. And man, talk about growing a team and getting better. You're getting your team better exponentially by doing that. Because if they believe in the why, then they're going to go to bat. They're going to be the first ones to pass that why on to the next guy.
That's exactly right. Like for me, when I see, this is just a small example, but if a lot of programs are dependent on players to help with field maintenance. And after the field is used, you got to grab a rake and you got to do a job. And a lot of times when I'm observing programs where the seniors or the older kids, the more experienced kids, the kids that might think that they're heavy contributors with the team's success are the ones that are passing the rake off to somebody else or saying, hey, Jimmy, you go do this, this, and this. I think that's not the ticket. What we tried to do was show the kids the why the field we wanted the field to be nice. It was for them. The way that the field played into their success. So why would you pass that on to somebody that's that maybe cares about it less than you do? If you're the best pitcher on the team, you better make the mound sparkle. You better make sure that's your favorite thing in the world. And you better show the younger kids how to do that and lead by doing it a certain way. We were very clear in what we wanted to do with our program from a culture standpoint. We wanted it to be a player-centered program. We wanted the kids to teach the kids. And once they understood what the purpose was, there was no pushback. They want to get involved. They want ownership. They want their hands in it. So I would encourage that for anybody listening.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is probably one of the most, I don't know if it's the most, but one of the most undervalued parts and things that a coach can do and should do. My recommendation is that this is something all coaches should do, and that is to give players autonomy. That can be another terms like leaders, you kind of like self-leaders and independent, and give them the autonomy, because kids, young kids, even older kids, college kids, they just don't really like, for the most part, to be bossed around or perceived to be bossed around and told and kind of puppeted around practice. And all right, this is the next step in the drill, and this is the next thing. And they don't like to be walked through every single thing over and over again. Now, they don't mind hearing it once typically, but when you have to tell them, all right, this is how we clean the field 6 times, they start to resent that a little bit. And a lot of them don't even maybe realize it, but they love autonomy. They love it. Kids love it. We love it. We love freedom. We love autonomy within parameters. You set the parameters and then you give them autonomy. And sometimes they come up with other ways that are better, but at the end of the day, they love that. They love that. And what they hate more than they love that, they hate just kind of feeling like they're getting bossed around and told what to do. I had an experience when I was teaching years ago in North Long Beach. Most of my kids it was North Long Beach, and most of my kids were from Compton, a few from Watts, but mostly, that area. And I had 55 PE students out there, and I would run them through the whole warm-up process, every stretch, everything. And they would kind of half do it, this, that, and the other. And eventually I said, you know what? I'm going to automate this a little so I can grade them more effectively and also connect with, it gave me more time to bring kids aside and talk to them, see how they're doing, especially if I heard something from the administration that they were dealing with some struggles. And I did that, and there was a side effect that I had no idea was going to happen. Looking back, it's pretty obvious, is they did so much better when they were running the show. Now, they weren't running the show, but they felt like they were running the show. I'm the one who set up the routine. I'm the one who gave them the parameters. I'm the one who laid out the expectations, but then I let them go with it. They were on autopilot. They got better. They were on each other. They were trying to pick each other. Hey, look, we do it this way. And they loved it. And I go, if this can work with these kids here, it can work with anybody, any kid, anywhere, because these are some of the most challenging situations, life situations these kids are coming from.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. I've had the great opportunity to be a special education teacher for going on 21 years. And typically what happens is you get a 9th grade student and you get to work with them for the 4 years that they're in high school. And when they come in, you're making a connection with the student, and you are doing so much lifting and so much of an engagement in their process to find success. And as we continue to grow towards graduation, the idea is that engagement becomes a lot less of me and a lot more of them. And they learn what the steps are to be successful. It sounds like that's what happened in your classroom. And I remember one particular teacher evaluation that I had with an administrator that didn't spend a lot of time in my classroom. And really, I wish that the gentleman would have been in there all the time, because if you've ever been in a special education classroom, you will know that group assignments and group efforts and putting kids in partners can be quite a challenge. Mm-hmm. Collaborating personalities and different disabilities and different strengths. And we had an evaluator that came in and watched our class, and the class ran so smoothly. The kids were so independently taking ownership in their education, and they were working collaboratively at such a level that when the administrator left, I had never felt better about an administrator being in my room, for them to see what we were accomplishing. And then the follow-up from the administrator was, you really weren't doing a lot of direct instruction during class. Like, how do you think we got to that point? I think that it was lost, the effort that it was previous to seeing, like you said, the autonomy that they were owning their education, they were owning their project, they were owning the connection and the collaboration piece. And that's got to be what's one of your foundations of instruction.
What a great example, a story about, and one thing that probably, I think about it, you 21 years, you said, in special education. I think, to me, a lot of the best coaches I ever met are in classrooms. They're teachers, and they're in classroom situations that are demanding in not demanding like AP or honors classes or high level, arithmetic and calculus, which I'm not saying that's easy to teach by any means, but I feel like special education, because it's really about the people first, and really working and being creative and connecting and really trying to you have to learn a lot and kind of be creative. And then with me, inner city kids, very at-risk kids, I had to learn, or I was going to be the kids just needed me a little bit more maybe than the kids at Modern Day in the AP calculus class. That's a great story about, I know that I say this, coaches, the best coaches and the laziest coaches look about the same when you go out there. And that is, they're not looking like they're working really hard. But now the trick is to see what happened beforehand, like you said, because the best coach shouldn't be out there yelling and screaming and running the entire practice. That's maybe the first day and maybe the first week, maybe the second week, but by the mid-season, end of this year, the great coaches are not in the midst. They're not having to run everything because they've already laid the foundation. They've given ownership. That word you used, I love that word. They've given ownership to the players. You could call it autopilot. I call it autonomy and ownership. And, some people might say, well, and then there's also the thing. I've been around coaches that are lazy and sit on the bench and don't do anything. But you can usually tell. All you got to do is look at the product. Are the kids, you look at the product. Is the product successful? And then you look at the coach. Are they working their butt off every step of the way during practice? And it looks like they're working hard? Or are they working hard early because they want to know that that's the smartest way to, and kind of the more wise way to handle kids? So you hear the word buy-in. I know that we see that all the time. I'm big on this. You're big on this. Anybody that's kind of been in the trenches as a coach or a parent or a teacher knows you got to get buy-in. In a business, you got to get buy-in. You got to sell it. Coaches, you got to sell it. And how do you sell what it is that you want the players to buy? You got to give them the why. Like Coach Murphy said, you got to share the why because they're not buying unless you're selling. And you know what? You're selling a great product, coaches. You're selling the best thing. You're selling them the values and foundation of a better life, using sports as a vehicle to get there. Teaching in classrooms it's more direct. It's like you're selling them education, which is obviously probably the main influencer in terms of overall lifetime success. And so we're selling a great product. We're not selling them drugs. We're not selling these things that they don't need. We're selling them something they need. And you got to sell it to them and give them the why, build a rapport, give them the why. Man, I want to do, you know what, Coach? I know we're running short on time. I want to hit, okay, so you have a son that's going through kind of that freshman period of high school. So we have a lot of youth coaches that are getting their kids ready for high school. And then you have high school kids, but this would be for all the youth coaches that they're trying to get their kids to make the high school. They want to get them prepped to, hopefully make the high school team. You've been a high school coach, head coach. You've coached a national title high school team. You've been around a lot of the phenomenal high school programs, some of the best in the country. What are a couple specific things you're looking at or looking for in a player at freshman tryouts?
Good question. The tryouts for the freshman baseball, I think, can be as challenging an evaluation as there is. You think of a professional scout is trying to gauge what an 18-year-old will look like at 22, or what a college scout might want to know what a 16-year-old will look like when they're 19. And when you're doing that freshman tryout, you're trying to figure out what a 14-year-old will look like when they're 17 a lot of times. And I would argue that growth between 14 and 17 is a wider margin than any of those other ones. So it's kind of a tough day. And I've been in different programs where, like I said, 12 kids show up and you got to uniform 12 kids. You just take this there. But I've been in other programs where there's 60 or 70 students that are trying out for a freshman team. And there are some things that you got to look for. I think that ability is a no-brainer. Size and speed is a no-brainer. Those things people see right off the surface. But some other things that I might look at a tryout is in how somebody's arm works, if it's really clean and projectable. How does the player interact with his peers? Do they get along? Are they more isolated? Something silly or superficial might be how they dress. But wearing a baseball uniform has some value in how it's applied. You can look like you've played baseball before when you show up to the tryout. I think that has value. So dress the right way. A big one for me, which I hope youth coaches are hitting on with the people they serve, is body language. Being in a tryout can be a very scary and nerve-wracking situation for an adult that's auditioning for something. For a 14-year-old to try out for the involvement in a program that's, a big community staple, like a big baseball program or something like that, there's some pressure there. And facing adversity could lead to some negative body language. My encouragement would be to talk about the energy bus and energy vampires. I want guys that are going to be on my energy bus. I want people that can get on board with me and people that realize that baseball is a very tough sport and you have to sometimes be the producer of your own energy. So bad body language, negative body language, sulking body language when things don't go your way is something that catches my eye pretty quickly. And then I look for players that have joy, that smile, that enjoy playing baseball. They enjoy competing. You talked about Jared Weaver earlier. You just enjoy that type of situation. You're not there because your older brother played. You're not there because your dad was a college player. You're there because you dig it, man. You dig it. This is your jam. You want to be a part of this thing. And you can see it on your face. So those are some things that I would look for to try out.
The interaction with peers. Yeah, I think that arm action, respecting the game, like being genuinely enjoying the game. And then the little details. It doesn't hurt. So youth coaches, coaches, dads, moms listening to this. You got your junior high son, daughter, maybe getting ready to go out for the team, and start with how they interact with peers. I remember a guy that a couple guys you probably know. I know Coach Savage. I'm sure you've spoke with him over the years. Coach Savage at UCLA, John, and then Pete Savage, I believe, is still coaching maybe in Reno High School. So John and Pete are brothers. But I remember the story. John Savage was at UCLA, and I believe that he was at UCLA at the time, and he goes to his brother's baseball game to scout a kid. And I'm almost certain it was these two. I read so much. I'm reading so much, watching so much stuff, listening to so many people. Sometimes I get my stories a little mixed up, but I'm pretty sure because this one really stood out. John Savage goes on his brother's request to go check out one of his brother's players at Reno, or maybe wherever they were playing at the time, but it was a Reno high school kid. And after the game, he goes, his Pete says to John, "So what'd you think? You like the kid?" And John says, "I can't recruit him." And his brother goes, "Well, what do you mean you can't recruit my own player? I'm your brother. This is my player." He said, "I can't recruit him. I watched how he interacted with his teammates and I didn't like it." I said, if that doesn't say it all right there, you're getting a recommendation. Okay, you're a kid, you're a high school kid or a junior high kid, and you're getting a recommendation from the varsity coach's brother or the coach at the college's brother, and they don't want any part of you. That's a pretty big deal. If that's got to be, and I mean, Coach Savage has had a lot of success at UCLA, and he's saying, "I'm not going to recruit you, even though my own brother said I should recruit you." I thought that was a pretty cool story.
Synergy outweighs talent, man. You got to have a good group of people that blend together.
Absolutely. Maybe one last quick one. Is there a strategy or something that you feel that you found that maybe like youth coaches, something that maybe the baseball community has always said, do it this way? I know we talked about hitting the ball hard in the air and kind of that whole kind of idea that was forever was hit the ball on the ground. Is there anything else? Do you feel like that the coach community that you're doing that you feel works well, that the coaching community, youth coaches could utilize?
A lot of what we do is cyclical, and this might be an old idea coming back around. But what I'm on lately, and I've just seen so much of it, a lot of this summer with the teams that I'm working with or the students I work with from my club program, and that is just like the simple idea of pulling the baseball. It seems radical. It's a radical idea that you should pull the ball. But when they're listening to a lot of hitting coaches and they're talking about hitting the ball to the backside of the field, I think that some things are lost in translation. Yeah, you watch Big League Baseball, and the best players in the world are pulling the ball off the ground. That's what the best players in the world do. But then you hear people that are like, hit the ball the other way, hit the ball the other way. And I think what happens a lot of times is, again, it leads to like a barrel dumping and a ball that's just up in the air the other way. And I had a chance this past summer to work with Brian Peters, the associate head coach at Long Beach State, and he was an ABCA convention speaker this year. And he was talking about a hybrid offense and being able to do a bunch of different things offensively, depending on what the situation dictates. One of the messages he had for me and for our team is that good hitters will hit the ball on the ground to the opposite field and in the air to the pull side. And bad hitters do the opposite thing. Bad hitters hit the ball in the air to their opposite side and they pull the ball on the ground. So what we talk a lot about in our trainings is to pull the ball in the air and how to do so. You've probably heard a lot of times, get inside the ball, get inside the ball. And I think get inside the ball is a really good cue, but I think it's misused. I think it's used a lot of times for, again, trying to hit the ball backside. And I think it's a pull cue. I think get inside the ball is a pull cue. It's trying to talk to the kid that's a barrel hooker that's going to hit the ball in the third base dugout on an outside pitch. And he's just out and around the ball. And inside pitches are in the parking lot. You don't get inside the inside pitch and pull the ball on a line. I think get inside the ball is how you get true backspin to the bull side. It's not how you hit the ball to right field, right? So I'm okay with the ball going the other way. I'm not saying don't hit the ball the other way. I'm saying that instruction has gone in such the opposite direction that if you're a high school pitcher, you can throw the ball inside. You can throw a fastball on the inside part of the plate. You're going to win. You are flat out going to win because people cannot hit that pitch anymore. So I would suggest people continue to talk about how to hit the ball correctly on the right side of the field. That would be my instructional message. And then I have a philosophical one that I think that we hit on already, but I just want to drive it home as maybe a last thing that we talk about. And that is to serve your players, serve your people, the people that you work with, the parents that have trusted you with the most valuable piece of their life, the administration that has appointed you, serve them. If you approach a coach whose mindset is that those around them are there to serve him or serve her, I'm not on that guy or that girl. I think they're doing it the wrong way. I think you got to be there to serve your people. I appreciate that you have that mindset. You talked about that earlier, and I would encourage other people to do the same.
Wow. Just when I thought I couldn't get any better, Coach, man, you just hit a grand slam. That is gold. And Brian Peters is, I'll vouch, and I've recommended Brian Peters on this podcast multiple times. And so that's interesting. You actually you sat down and we're talking with him, and he's I really respect where he's coming from when it comes to hitting, and the Long Beach State hitting coach. And in fact, I did watch that same video, the ABCA. He was invited out. So you're talking to some high level great coaches. That's awesome. I could probably brag more about you here, but we'll wrap it up there. Go back and listen to that last part if you don't listen to the whole thing again. Man, Coach Patrick Murphy, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for thinking of me. I appreciate the platform and look forward to catching up with you again.
Definitely. Hopefully we can do it again. And man, fired up. Thank you. I told my listeners I didn't really want to do a whole lot of interviews unless I thought they could be really good. And you exceeded my expectations. And I'm sure the listeners will get a ton out of this. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Well, appreciate you.
You got it. Take care. All right. That wraps up episode 95. Man, Coach Murphy bringing it. That wisdom. I don't know. That last part, the part 3 of the interview, just phenomenal. What a combination with Coach Murphy. He cares about players. He cares about the people on his team. He cares about the individual, the human aspect, the human element, the human component. And he knows a heck of a lot about skill development, strategies, and the game of baseball itself. That's a rare find right there, and I'm glad we could have him on here for you. I look forward to being back here next week with you guys. And in next week's episode, I'm going to share out a conversation I had. I told you a couple weeks ago, I went to go visit all my buddies that I grew up with, all the grade school buddies that I grew up with. Well, I got into a conversation with one of them who happened to hang out a couple nights earlier with Garrett Cole. And I thought one of the things he mentioned about his discussion with Garrett Cole, not giving away all Garrett Cole's strategies, but there's something we could learn from that discussion they had, and that'll be next week. And until then, go follow Coach Murphy at Coach Murphy 14 on Twitter, Coach Murphy 14 on Twitter. You can follow me, 8020_baseball, 8020_baseball. Go over to the 8020 Baseball website, check out all the stuff over there. Tons of good information, tons of coaching resources, almost 30 articles and videos combined over there, ready for you to take in and use with your players and your teams. And until next week, take care of yourself, take care of your health, take care of those families, and take this information that we learned today from Coach Murphy and take it out there and make the baseball community, make your team, make your players better. And I'll catch you on the flip side.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.